The snow was falling that evening like a hush upon the world, thick flakes spinning down through the dim amber light of the station lamps. The platform creaked beneath my boots as I stood waiting, though for what I couldn't rightly say. The train was late, or maybe it wasn't coming at all. The world had a way of forgetting certain stops, certain people. I was one of them. My name's Eli Hartwell, 30 winters behind me, and more miles than I care to count riding under skies that never called me home. The wind cut sharp, threading through the gaps of my coat, carrying the scent of pine and smoke. I might have been alone forever had she not stepped out of the blizzard that night, a small figure wrapped in fur and wool, walking steady as if she belonged to the snow itself. Ayana, I would learn later. A name that meant eternal blossom. She moved like silence made flesh, her braid dark against the white, her eyes calm as river stones. She carried a basket filled with kindling, and when she dropped it on the slick platform, I bent to help her before thinking. Our hands met among the fallen sticks. Her skin was warm despite the cold, and when she looked at me, I felt something in my chest stutter. She nodded once in thanks but didn't speak. The air between us thickened with unsaid things, the kind of moment that hangs in memory long after it ends. Behind the frosted window of the station office, old widow Maybelle watched us, her lips pressed thin as wire. Folks around here didn't take kindly to lines being crossed, and I could feel her disapproval seeping through the glass like frost. I tipped my hat more out of habit than courage. "You're not from around here?" I said finally. The words sounded too loud, too heavy. She gave a small smile, almost shy. "My people are," she answered softly. Her voice carried a lilt like a song I almost remembered. "The Nokomi's land stretched farther than these rails." The snow began to fall harder, a curtain closing around us. "No train tonight," Maybelle called out from the door, her breath fogging the air. "You best find shelter, Mr. Hartwell. Storm's fixin' to stay." I looked out at the endless white and then back at Ayana. "Cabin's not far," she said, as if reading the question that hadn't yet reached my tongue. "If you don't mind sharing the fire." For a heartbeat I hesitated. Not because I feared her, but because the world would. Still, loneliness can break a man's pride, and the night was bitter. "I'd be grateful," I said, and she nodded once, leading me toward the trees. The path wound through drifts that swallowed our boots. The world was all whisper and white, and the only sound was the rhythmic crunch of snow beneath our steps. The deeper we walked, the quieter it grew, until even my thoughts seemed muffled. At times, I wanted to ask about her life, her people, what brought her to live alone out here. But every time I opened my mouth, her stillness quieted me again. She moved as if she'd always known her place in the vastness of things, while I'd spent my life searching for mine. When we reached her cabin, the sight of it felt like mercy. The walls were built from dark timber, sturdy but scarred by storms. She opened the door and warmth spilled out, thick with the scent of cedar and herbs. I stepped inside, shaking the snow from my hat. The fire burned low, its light flickering across carved wooden figures lined along the mantel. Animals, spirits, things I didn't recognize but felt the meaning of all the same. She hung her coat and went to stir the fire. The silence between us was different now, comfortable like a shared secret. I offered to fetch more wood from outside, but she waved a hand. "You're a guest," she said. "Sit. Rest." I lowered myself into a chair near the hearth, my bones aching from the cold. She moved quietly, every gesture deliberate. When she set a tin cup of tea before me, steam curling up like ghosts, I caught the faint scent of pine needles and honey. I drank and warmth spread through me slow as sunrise. "Do you live here alone?" I asked. "My mother once lived here," she said. Her eyes went distant for a moment. "Now it's just me." I nodded. "Lost someone myself. Brother. 5 years ago. Cattle raid went bad." Her gaze returned to me, steady, knowing. "Then you know the way grief never leaves. It only learns to speak softer." We didn't talk much after that. Words seemed clumsy things compared to the peace in that small cabin. When I offered to mend the broken latch on her door, she watched me with quiet amusement, as though she'd known I couldn't sit still with my hands idle. When I finished, she smiled, small and genuine. "You fix things," she said. "Maybe even what's not yours to fix." Her words lingered in the firelight. That night, lying awake on a cot near the hearth, I listened to the wind pressing against the walls and thought of how strange it felt to belong somewhere, even for a night. The storm didn't pass by morning. Or the morning after. Days stretched slow, wrapped in white silence. I helped where I could, chopping wood, mending tools, fetching water from the frozen stream. She'd hum as she worked, soft melodies that made the walls seem to breathe. I never asked what they meant. Some things lose power when named. By the third day, laughter had found its way between us. It came over burnt stew and crooked shelves, over small mistakes that didn't matter. Once, when she caught me watching her too long, she tilted her head and said, "You look like a man trying to remember something he's never known." I had no answer for that. Maybe she was right. The quiet rhythm of those days began to feel like a life I could live. But the world, I've learned, doesn't stay still for love. It was Sheriff Renner who brought the cold back in. He rode up one morning, his coat heavy with frost, eyes sharp as flint. "You've been keeping company up here, Hartwell?" he asked, glancing past me toward the cabin. "Town's been talking." "I'm not breaking any law," I said, though my voice shook with something that wasn't fear but shame, old and inherited. He spat into the snow. "Law's one thing. Decency's another. Folks won't stomach it. You best remember who you are." He left without waiting for an answer. Ayanna had been standing at the window. She said nothing, but I saw the hurt flicker across her face before she turned away. That night the air inside the cabin felt thin. I tried to speak, to say something that would make the world smaller again, but she only smiled sadly. "They see difference where there's only breath," she said. "You can't teach a storm not to blow." The next morning we went to the river. The ice lay smooth, unbroken, reflecting the gray sky. She knelt beside it, tracing patterns on the surface with a twig. "When I was a child," she said quietly, "my mother told me the river never stops moving even under the ice. It carries all things forward." I knelt beside her. "Even what's broken?" "Especially that," she whispered. Something in me gave way then, quiet as the cracking of thin ice. I took her hand, rough and warm from work. "You don't deserve their silence," I said. She turned to me, eyes glistening. "Neither do you." The world went still, and I realized I was done being afraid of belonging. That night, beneath the amber glow of the fire, I found myself on one knee without planning it. The words left me before I knew they were mine. "Ayanna," I said, "will you marry me?" Her breath caught, eyes wide and shimmering. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she touched my face with trembling fingers. "You know what this will cost," she murmured. "I know what it's worth." A tear slipped down her cheek, bright as the flame. "Then yes," she said softly. "Yes, Eli Hartwell." Outside, a wolf called from the hills, a lonely sound made whole by the echo it found. I thought the hardest part was over, but in truth the world was just beginning to notice. Word reached town before we did. Whispers turned to glares, glares to threats. Renner rode out again, this time with others behind him. They found us near the old bridge, packs loaded for travel. "You're leaving then?" he said. Ayanna stood beside me, her chin high. I could feel her trembling, but she didn't step back. "We are," I said. He studied us for a long moment, the snow swirling between. Then he said quietly, "Ain't no peace where you're headed. But maybe there's none left here either." He tipped his hat, almost respectfully, and turned away. The others followed, some muttering, most silent. When they were gone, Ayanna let out a shaky breath. I took her hand, and together we crossed the bridge, leaving the town and its judgments behind. Ahead lay only wilderness, but it felt like freedom. Spring found us by the river where we first spoke of the ice. The trees had burst into green, and the air smelled of new earth. We were married there, beneath the cottonwoods. Her kin came from the hills, a few of mine came quietly, unannounced. Even widow Maybelle arrived with wildflowers in her apron, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. The ceremony was simple. Vows whispered, hands bound with red thread, laughter rising like birds. When the drums began, I realized I'd never felt such stillness inside me. Not silence, stillness. The kind that comes when the world finally agrees to let you be. That night, we danced by the fire until the stars blurred. Ayanna's hair shimmered in the light, her smile brighter than the flames. I remember thinking, if this is exile, let me never return. Years later, I can still hear that river, still feel the warmth of her hand. People talk of courage as something loud and fearless, but they're wrong. Courage is quiet. It's choosing love when the world says you shouldn't. It's the steady breath you take before saying yes. The night we left that station, I thought I was walking into a storm. Turns out I was walking home.